everyone. So excited to have everybody here today. We do have all of our panelists coming over, so let me make sure everybody has joined us before we officially get started. Let's see. Still waiting on a few of them to come over, it looks like. Got Godfrey. All right, we've got everybody. Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. We'll go ahead and officially get started, and maybe some other folks will join us as we get moving forward. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. And all right, so let's get started. So welcome, everyone. So delighted to have everybody here today. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Aimee Holdwick, and I'm here today with my co-chairs for the Department of Professionalism. We have Dr. Lamya Kamel, who is the chair in Chicago, and also Dr. Kimberlie Wilson, who's the chair in New York. And we're really pleased to welcome her. We haven't had a chair in New York for a little while, so very happy to have that position filled again. And if you guys aren't familiar with us, I'm the chair here in San Diego, and Dr. Kamel's the chair in Chicago. And you can always feel free to reach out to any of us, but just so you know which campus we kind of reside at. And this is our second discussion panel. We had our first one last term, and we plan to hold these every term in order to help build community across all the different groups and programs at the college, and also to really talk about what professionalism is and get people thinking about it a little bit more. It's one of these topics that's sometimes hard to pin down or wrap your mind around. So our goal of our department is really to promote professionalism across all of the different areas and campuses. And so that's part of what we want to do with connecting with everyone and getting everyone's ideas and thoughts around this too. So I really want to thank our panelists for being here, and nice to see all of you guys. You can maybe wave as I say your name. So we have Godfrey Fayne here. He's our student council president in San Diego. He's also a DACM student. We have Dr. Stacy Gomes, who is the vice president of academic affairs for the college. And Stephen Kendrick, our academic advisor in New York, and he's also the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee chair. We also have Seanna Tully, Dr. Seanna Tully, who is a faculty member in Chicago and also the curriculum and program review chair there. And you can see I already mentioned myself and my co-chairs for the Department of Professionalism here. And before we actually get started with the panel, we want to keep reminding everybody of what professionalism is, because this is one of these topics that's, again, really tough to pin down. So we developed as a department a working definition for professionalism. And this is based on the ACGME standards. So that's the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education. So you'll see the definition here. And we'll keep touching back to this in a lot of our meetings or interactions with different folks around the college. And we know that a lot of these words could be interpreted differently or mean different things to different people in different settings, and professionalism is like that. But we hope by everyone thinking about professionalism a bit more and maybe where they can start to influence and implement it a little more in their own lives, we can keep building this all together. So representatives of the college must demonstrate a commitment to carrying out professional responsibilities, adherence to ethical principles, and sensitivity to a diverse patient, student, and staff population. Representatives are expected to demonstrate respect, compassion, and integrity, a responsiveness to the needs of patients and society that supersedes self-interest, accountability to patients, society, and the profession, and a commitment to excellence and ongoing professional development. A commitment to ethical principles pertaining to provision or withholding of clinical care, confidentiality of patient information, informed consent, and business practices. Sensitivity and responsiveness to others' differences, including but not limited to culture, age, gender, and disabilities. And again, we know it's never all inclusive of everything. It's never a perfect definition, but it's our working definition, and one that we hope everyone will consider and think how to apply and how that helps us to come to a common understanding of this. So we always want to keep that in mind as we're doing anything related to this department. And our topic today that we chose was to look at our college's core values and how those relate to professionalism, because a lot of these, all of them really tie into this concept. So we thought it was a great time to reflect on these values and think about how we embody them. And so we invited this great group of panelists to kind of share their thoughts about professionalism and these values. So for our values, this is taken right from Pacific College website. All members of our community embody the intention of improving lives exponentially by supporting health and well-being through our daily actions. We lead by example and by practicing the values of integrity, mindfulness, compassion, critical thinking, collaboration, and education. And as we're about to move into the panel itself, I did forget to mention that feel free to use the chat box as we're going. If you guys have anything that you would like to add, we will be watching the chat box and try to answer any questions as they come up. And we hope to have some time for audience participation today as well. If we don't have time for that, or you're not comfortable sharing that with the whole group, this is being recorded and will be posted on the webpage. Feel free to send a private chat message or to email one of us or all of us. We love to get everybody's feedback and participation. And we really hope everyone's inspired to carry this conversation further and think about these things more deeply for yourselves in whatever your role is at the college and as you move beyond it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lamya and our panelists. And
great, thanks, Aimee. I love reading that core values statement. I remember when it was being put together, how there was a big push for that exponentially. We're not just changing lives; we have to change them exponentially. I love that. We're no laziness about the process. So I love seeing that every time I see it. It's a good reminder of the discussions too, Stacy. I know you're involved in the majority of those, but great. So we wanted to bring everybody here today, like Aimee said, to have a discussion on how these core values really impact professionalism. So how do they relate to professionalism, and also how it shows up for you in your professional experience, in your professional life. So I thought we'd start with Dr. Stacy Gomes, who is really the co-founder of this department and is very engaged in creating this and sees the importance of this organization, this piece of the organization. So I thought we'd start with you, Dr. Gomes.
Great, thanks Lamya and Aimee and everybody for participating this morning and getting to this point after almost 5 years, I want to say at least, with our founder, Jack Miller, when we discussed the importance of professionalism, not only within the acupuncture and massage programs, but I mean, those were the primary drivers, certainly, but just within our student body period and ourselves as staff members and faculty and individuals, we started looking at, why is this important for grads, and, what can we do to make this happen and come alive within our college, and really seeing opportunities for students, like really seeing how they would show up in their professional life. This is a good thing. Everybody wants to be more professional. Everybody wants to be taken more seriously. And so we started looking into really what that meant for healthcare providers and for our professions in particularly acupuncture massage. And we started looking at where it was coming from within the physical therapy profession. Because the physical therapy field actually took this on about 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer now. It's hard to lose track of time. It's hard to keep track of time over the years. And one of my good friends, colleague, Dr. Wanda Nish, was the president of University of St. Augustine at that time, and actually one of the leaders in the nation for helping design professionalism curriculum and assessment within the PT profession. And so we met with her several times. We looked at what the PT profession was doing and how they were able to launch this initiative within the profession and make it a brand for PTs, so that when their graduates were out in practice, that was a core value that they could actually own and be recognized for. And we were really impressed with that. We're like, wow, that would be great. We want to do that. And so we looked at their model, their curriculum, their instruments, and have tried to embrace most of what they proposed back then, but then have actually been working with our department chairs now for a couple of years, and we've been meeting about this for probably 5 years. And now since Aimee and Lamya and who's our New York chair, oh my gosh, can't think of her name right, Kimberlie. I'm like, forgetting all the names. Yes, and Kimberlie. So now we have 3 chairs one at each campus that are really trying to get the momentum going for this department. It's a new department. Pacific College hasn't had a new department in years. Of course, nursing is a department, but this department is meant to span every program, every aspect of student, faculty, and staff life, to really come up into the culture of the school, to change the tone and the presence of how we all show up. And so when I look at our core values and think about, what you're going to hear from our panelists is really about showing up and being mindful and compassionate and collaborating with each other. And to me, that just speaks to my work in the profession for the past 10 to 15 years with the Academic Collaborative for Integrative Health and with the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. I'm still on the board for ACIH, the Academic Collaborative. And when we started working on the interprofessional education core values, competencies in healthcare, period, for the 5 licensed professions: alternative medicine, acupuncture, massage, chiropractic, midwife, naturopathy, and really looking at what is it about these 5 licensed professions that are trying to get into healthcare clinics, hospitals, and what's keeping them from getting positions, being taken seriously, getting grants, all the stuff that we want. We really came back to this idea of collaboration and interprofessionalism. And so we partnered with the Interprofessional Education Consortium, IPEC. It's an international group of educators, healthcare providers that look at professionalism and collaboration. And so my work with ACIH then led into ACOM and the task force for the first professional competencies, first professional doctorate competencies. And so you're going to see that interprofessional education / collaboration now as a graduation competency for doctoral programs, which took another, 10 years. So our discussion with the panels before we jumped on was that, and Godfrey would say, it's just like you plant your seeds and you don't always eat that day. It takes years to see the fruition of your work sometimes, and to see this department come alive with my work with Academic Collaborative and ACOM for the acupuncture profession, but also looking at healthcare in general for grads, and how do you show up? How do you show up as a professional? How are you collaborating with somebody who's right in front of you? How are they different from you? How are you listening to them? And so when thinking about this all together and what you're going to hear from the panelists, it just reminded me and re-emphasized the points that I've been working on for so long, which is that mindfulness and awareness is the starting point. And we know this, we know it, but then thinking about that in the context of patient outcomes and looking at patient care and how you're collaborating and speaking and really working with another individual is so important. And I realize that as students, it takes practice. It takes, it's baby steps. You practice and, through clinical counseling classes or in the clinic, and you do something, you're like, okay, I can do that better. And so also for me, it's self-reflection too. That idea to critically think and reflect about, okay, well, I know this now. It may not have worked perfect in this situation. What did I learn from it? What can I do better? so that you can be that person that is professional and taken seriously and provide the best care that you can. So I am so happy to see where this department is going and how it's going to layer into other departments and other programs, and to see how it impacts us in 3, 5, 10 years, to know that we're giving you the skills and knowledge now to be really successful and help the professions grow. So that's my spiel.
Awesome. Thanks, Stacy. I think that I think you bring up a great point about how this is just a starting point to being a great clinician, and really what that means is being present for your patients, right? Yeah. So I think it's a lovely segue actually to Dr. Seanna Tully. I'd love to hear kind of your perspective and which of these values are particularly important to your professionalism.
Yeah. Thanks, Lamya. I decided to talk about mindfulness because I feel like as a clinician and as a professor, it basically keeps me out of trouble as best I can. So just so you have a sense of that, the practice of mindfulness comes from Buddhism, right? So one of our core philosophical influences on Chinese medicine. And so the way I think about it as somebody that practiced Zen Buddhism is that while mindfulness is a noun, it does describe the act or practice of being fully present. So to borrow from Zen, it's basically the mindful act is akin to being one with each moment. And the minute that you actually describe yourself as mindful, you're already outside of yourself looking in. And so you're outside of that mindfulness practice. It's like a type of flow. So it ties our professional behavior in lots of ways. So for example, like bringing this medicine to a Western audience or a Western patient can be super challenging at times. And it's best to like either plan ahead, like have some scripts, like we do a lot. Lamya and I work on that at work. Just really planning your words carefully, not shooting from the hip, taking a moment before speaking and bringing your awareness to the present moment will not only keep you from like offending others, but will also help elevate the medicine and help us to be taken more seriously. When I first started my practice, I actually started as a Western herbalist in like 1997. I worked at a free clinic that here in Chicago was part of Vida Cita, or the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. So I was a 90s punk kid. I wore long underwear and shorts on top, and I had patches of like Food Not Bombs patches and whatever. So if you were like on the Chicago campus, I dressed a lot like Onion, if you remember Onion. My mentor was the acupuncturist Martin Romero, and he like intervened, kind of took me to the side and was like, you might want to start dressing like an herbalist. And I was like, what does that mean? Like the herbalist I knew actually dressed like me, like Adam Seller from Pacific School of Herbal Medicine in Oakland, or Northeast School of Botanical Medicine, which is run by Seven Song. So I was like kind of confused. But I honestly had to like surrender to this and, you know, my own ego attachment to who I thought I was, and give myself over to the moment and like what my patients might need so that they could hear what I have to say, because I had good education and I could better help them actually get somewhere. So as an acupuncturist, I also feel like mindfulness practice is essential for correct needle technique. Like if I'm not present, I could potentially cause more discomfort with needling in the patient. It also helps me like remember, like if I've pulled all the needles that I've inserted, like I'll catch myself if my like mind is straying, and I'll be like, hello, are you here? How many needles are in the right arm? Think, you know, just really paying attention. So in Zen practice also, like there's a huge emphasis on leaving the space the way you found it. It's just a big part of mindfulness training. So if you share a practice or space with other practitioners, like you will have a healthier workplace if you remove the trash, leave the needle containers orderly, refill the sheets, wipe down the face cradles, etc., so that your workplace and your coworker can start the next day like totally unobstructed. There's no feelings of, you know, resentment, just even those mild little annoyances the next day. Like it's a really healthier way to work. And plus, like having a clean clinic environment is more professional for your patients to take you more seriously. You know, and sometimes we're so busy in practice, like we forget to allot time for mindful eating. Sometimes we're like cramming food into our mouths. You got to schedule that time in, like including like as a student too, like, do you have time to eat? Are you hangry? Like, are you spending more time than you would like being like stressed or because you're procrastinating? Like, what kind of steps can you take? Like really paying attention to those feelings instead of just like trying to get away from them or just like watching TV. You don't have to study every waking moment to be good at this medicine. It's actually not efficient. Maybe you need to exercise or do a mindfulness walk, you know, where you pay attention to your feet on the surface of the ground. And then also like being present for your patients in a mindful way means that during the intake, you're able to quiet your own mind's chatter to fully hear the patient's story. So, and actually the longer you're in practice, the harder this might become unless you have like a kind of a beginner's mind. If you're truly present for the patient's story, then the treatment's already begun, because so often patients are not met by their practitioners with a fully present human being in front of them. You know, like, for example, when patients begin to explain their reasons for their visits, doctors on average will interrupt them after 11 seconds. But, you know, as practitioners, we know that we need to keep the patients on topic, but at the same time, we have to distinguish ourselves, like, how are we different? How do we want to be? So yeah, and it also helps you realize your own discomfort. Like maybe the patient has a red flag and requires that you refer them out, or maybe it's more subtle than that and you realize this patient's just beyond your abilities or just not a good fit. So there's this mindfulness non-attachment so that you can just let go of that patient and refer them out. So it's not something that comes naturally, it's a skill. You have to practice it. So the way of mindfulness, as well as another Pacific College value, compassion, actually, to paraphrase from Master Hawkwind, it grows directly from sitting meditation practice. So if you don't have a practice yet, I suggest that you start. It's always good. Taking like a Kaizen approach, which is like a system of behavior change in Japan, just start with a very achievable low bar, like 3 minutes a day, seated, back straight, facing a wall, in a chair with your feet planted firmly on the ground. You just fold your hands in your lap, put your mind in your hara between Ren 4 and Ren 6, and then leave your eyes open, but cast them at a 45-degree angle downwards and just count your breath. You can count both your inhale and exhale, or only count your exhales. And you just count up to 10, and then you repeat. It doesn't have to be complicated. If that style of practice doesn't work for you, like, you can go online and look at John Kabat-Zinn's work. He's really excellent at discussing mindfulness and training healthcare practitioners in it. He's got a couple videos on YouTube. And you just work your way up, you know, 3 minutes and then 5 minutes. And some days you will feel like your mind is super unfocused, and other days it'll be great. You'll start to get the hang of it. It's like a game, as my friend said when she started. It's like a game. I play with myself. It's true. But I'm not saying that you should practice Buddhism. Like, Christians have a centering prayer based on Thomas Merton's contemplative prayer. Judaism is meditation is a way to cleave to God. In Islam, meditation is zikr, like remembrance. But basically, the idea is to not lose sight of who you are, but to know who you are more completely. And in so doing, there's a number of benefits. You're just better at being present, and you can actually, in terms of objective skills, like really do a better job with pulse. That also makes a pretty nice difference. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you, Seanna. I think that I love the point of really bringing it in from the beginning, starting when you're in school. I mean, these are principles that you can begin and they'll impact everything. I certainly remember as a student not being intentional enough about eating, and I remember that tracking into my practice as well. And it is a practice you have to keep on top of yourself. I'm lucky enough to have clinic managers who force me to eat. That's fine. You do what you got to do. Um, but I think that you're absolutely right. It's something that it starts in school, but it never ends. And in fact, I think it gets more complicated the further along you get as a practitioner. So I 100% agree with you on that. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think it brings up a nice transition, actually. I'd love to hear, Stephen, what you have to say about your thoughts on these particular values. I think when we were chatting earlier, you were bringing up a little bit that really kind of went in line with what Dr. Tully was saying. So yeah, let me turn it over to you, Stephen.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. So for me, looking at what professionalism kind of is in our core values, I really think about critical thinking and education, and a little bit of collaboration because the background that I have, I've worked in education, I've taught students, and a lot of things that I've done. My teaching style and background comes from like a multicultural education background where I'm meeting those students or people I'm interacting with at the level that they're at, to kind of bring them up and have that same conversation so they can understand where I'm coming from, where I can understand where they're coming from, in a way that's kind of respectful of whatever's kind of going on in their lives and things like that. I'm a very kind of short to the point person. I'm not going to be super long-winded. But one thing that I've always kind of noted with students that are preparing for like public speaking types of things, or want to interact, or having that being forced to be that person talking in front of other people. Sorry, I'm tripping myself over words today. Is you have to put yourself out there and being aware of that person that you're interacting with. I hate talking in front of people, but I've gotten used to it. In my undergraduate days, I forced myself to kind of be that type of person where I became super involved on the campus and all those types of things. And it made me kind of more aware of how I interact and how I talk with people. And it got me prepared to actually teach classes, do things like that. And looking in the medical field, you're doing that every day. You're meeting a new patient, and every time you're working with a new patient, you have to kind of put yourself out there so they can kind of learn what you're like, and you're kind of understanding how you can help them in their journey of self-care, whatever ailments they're having and things like that. So meeting them where they are in that conversation, because they might not know all the things that you're kind of talking about, or you're referring to, especially if you're using Chinese medicine, or you're working with massage therapy. They don't know things about their body in those same intricate ways that you do. So kind of putting it to a level they can understand, but doesn't seem in a condescending way, is the kind of easiest way I've always interacted with a lot of my students and people I've talked with, to kind of bring them up to speed of where I'm talking to, and rephrasing things many times if you have to. The counseling background in me as well notes to always kind of rephrase things multiple times, in a way that doesn't feel like it's redundant for a lot of students that I interact with on a regular basis. And even collaborating with other people, because sometimes I'm not going to know the answer of how to kind of interact with a person, because I just might be clicking with them. So utilizing your resources and other people you might work with or had classes with, mentors and mentees, they'll have a different perspective than you would. And you can always learn from somebody that's either your mentee or mentor in a different way, and all the different ways that you interact with them, because they might have had an experience that's similar to you, and using those resources is kind of really key for you to kind of build up your professionalism in a way that you feel open, honest, and very relatable to other people that you interact with.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I agree. I think that ties in what Dr. Tully was saying too. This idea of meeting someone where they're at is going to help build that trust and allow you to actually allow them to open up, but allow yourself to actually access your full potential as well, right? And I think that does start in as a student. Deb wrote hearing versus listening, right? That's it seems at the forefront you hear those, they sound the same, right? But I was hearing it, I wasn't listening, right? So yes, perfect. I would love to pass it to Godfrey to hear your insights into this.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And that's actually another segue that I was thinking about, collaboration. That's a huge part of one of the values that I've seen, or that I've experienced since the last 2 years I've been here on campus. And it kind of ties into all of the core values, because you're constantly learning from each other, right? And I kind of resonated with Stephen because I wasn't always that person that was into public speaking. But once I got here to campus, or once I came to Pacific College, I was like, all right, Godfrey, you're going to have to be able to set yourself on a new level. You got to set yourself to a new standard. So what's going to make you, stand out, from your old self? And the thing is, you have to be able to put yourself in a position to where you are forced to do it, right? You have to set standards for yourself so you can increasingly, gradually elevate. And so it's okay. It's okay to not really know what to talk about, especially like with your narrative bias. Stephen also touched on that too. And I always come to points in times to where like people come to me and ask me questions and things like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know this. But what I am going to do is I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to listen to them because I'm going to know this in the future. And when I take note of that, I go get information from somebody else. I collaborate with different people to be able to have that and be able to collaborate with somebody else, because somebody else is going to need that answer, right? And the more you collaborate with people, you're able to get your goals accomplished at a much faster pace with in the appropriate amount of time. I'm a big believer of teamwork. Teamwork is dream work, right? And I want to take that into my practice and be able to work with my patients, because it's a two-way street. I have to be able to collaborate with my patient. I have to be able to listen to them to see what their needs are. If they're not ready to get treated to our particular style at that point in time, hey, it's okay. You got to meet them where they are, right? So, hey, if they're not ready for needles, hey, let's try something else, acupressure. All right, if they're not trying, wanting to do acupressure and things like that, hey, give them gua sha, cupping. We have a wide arsenal of skills and techniques. We have to listen to our patients to see what they want and what they desire, because the more that you're able to build a relationship with your patient, the quicker they're able to get to their goals of becoming more healed, a better healing state, or seeking their goals that they want to see, right? So like I'm a real keen principle to collaborating and things like that with my patients, my colleagues, because all those tools that I learned are from my colleagues, my classmates. We talk back and forth and things like that during class and things like that, because whatever I don't pick up on in class, I guarantee you one of my classmates are going to know it. So it's always good to set yourself into those environments to where you're able to learn and grow. If you're not growing and learning constantly, well then, hey, what's life living for, right? What's life living for? This is like universal for everything. I know I won't be able to know everything once I graduate, and that's the fun thing about this process, because I'm always able to constantly strive to where I want to be. And even when I get to where I want to be, is always somewhere I want to go next. And I have to be able to inspire somebody to have that same mindset, because I learned that from somebody else. You pay it forward. And like I said, like with being able to collaborate with people and things like that, that's the whole thing of Chinese medicine. You take a little bit from here, take a little bit from there, and you can kind of compile it all to your needle song. We call it a needle song. You create your own song and art, because this is what it simply is. Chinese is everything. Chinese medicine is everything, or Kung Fu is everything. Same thing, right? So I really like how a lot of the people have spoken earlier on some of the topics, because all these values are very, very detrimental or very valuable to the topic of being professional. It's a whole holistic dynamic. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Godfrey. I love the idea of collaboration at the level of a student, and then how it kind of continues to grow. I'd love to hear your opinion, Stacy, because I know that you work pretty much your whole life is collaboration. I think that's a fair statement, right? And really kind of coordinating all sorts of different constituencies. I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on collaboration.
Oh gosh, it's such a big, big topic, but it's so important. It's so important. I remember a story, well, a time when I was doing my doctoral degree, probably about, I don't know, at least 10 or so years ago. And one of my faculty members would remind me and tell us all that everything starts with relationships, right? Like it takes years and years to create trust with another person. And we can get a lot done when we build trust and our relationships are meaningful and authentic, and that collaboration comes from that space. And I think about all of our work at Pacific. I've been here for 24 years and trying to create offsites for our graduates. And I think we have 26 now across the nation. And those did not happen overnight. No. They took years of relationship building and collaboration. And you have to show up, you have to listen, you have to be real and authentic, you have to follow up on emails and phone calls, you have to sometimes be working nights and weekends and go to these meetings with people that create trust, showing them that you care enough to collaborate with them. And as much as I wish that these collaborations were easy sometimes, I mean, over a patient, it's one thing to have an interaction with another healthcare provider where you're collaborating. But what I have learned over the years is that relationship building and collaboration takes real, intentional, authentic work in showing up time after time, year after year, answering emails promptly, answering phone calls, being articulate, being there with the information ready. I mean, I agree with Godfrey that sometimes we don't always have the answers. And Stephen, like, we don't have the answers. We go and we seek, but you say that. You say, you're just you're real and authentic and honest about that. And people respect that. Obviously, we know this. So yes, my years in collaboration spans many organizations and boards and hospitals and clinics and programs and educational institutions. And it's hard work. But when you believe in something like I do, and we all do, that healthcare and wellness, we should all have access to this. We should all be able to be well and have these tools and these clinicians available to us. We all believe in that, so we work hard to make these collaborations happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, these ideas of the fact that it is very intentional, right? It's not just, it doesn't just happen, is exactly the point kind of that Seanna was making earlier too, right? Part of mindfulness is being present, but also recognizing that things flow freely when you allow them to flow freely, right? I think we all buy into that, or we probably wouldn't be practicing acupuncture. So, allowing kind of opening those channels to let the flow move. What are your? I'd love to hear, Seanna, your thoughts on collaboration as well, because I think you see it in a slightly different way than Stacy does.
Sure. Well, I've worked in integrative medicine since 2001. So shortly after working with the herb school that I went to, the Western Herb School, I got a job at North Shore University Health System in the integrative medicine department. I worked as a dual hire between the pharmacy department and the integrative medicine department. So I feel like the collaboration pieces also called me to task in my ability to really meet the needs as a professional and visioning what a professional actually is, whether it's presenting evidence-based data, whether it's finding the right, I'm going to borrow from Jillian Stansberry, who's a naturopathic physician at NUNM. She calls it finding the right incantations for the person in front of you, whether it's a patient, right? Like incantations, like this patient needs to hear about chakras, this patient needs to hear about evidence-based medicine, and just really attuning to what the situation calls for. So not just with patients, but with other providers. So like really attuning to that and finding that sort of that way in is that's where I'm at. I feel like the other place that I worked after working at North Shore at Whole Health Chicago, it's a lot more informal. It's sort of like a family medicine practice. But we always had this like congenial intentionality around making sure that we collaborated, because that was the whole vision of the practice. So whether it's just really curbsiding somebody and touching base, giving somebody a heads up, or just saying like, hey, there's this aspect to this patient's case that's really bugging me. And like, how can we double team this patient to like get on that? I still see a patient, I co-treat somebody with the provider at Whole Health. And honestly, regardless of the personal relationship that I had with this person when I worked there, like to say it was good is wrong, not true. So like, it was a difficult situation that we were both in, and we still have to rise above the difficult situation and do what's best for the patient. And, communicate over email and find a way to help this patient. Because she's really stuck, and she needs both of us to double team her, actually. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I love that, kind of putting your ego aside for the benefit of the patient, right? And not thinking about how somebody did you wrong, or how you should know everything, like Godfrey was saying, right? It's okay to not know everything, and in fact, when you are honest about that, it generally engenders you to your patients, right? Great. What do you think, Stephen? Because you were talking a little bit about collaboration too. I'm kind of stuck on collaboration. That's kind of where my jam is. So sorry, or not sorry. Stephen, what are your thoughts on that from your perspective, particularly being the chair of this new department, even newer than ours? What are your thoughts on that? How that influences kind of, because you are really bringing in all these different constituencies from the different campuses. I'm curious how you work with that.
For me particularly, since it's a new committee, I have to lean on collaborating with other people because I'm helping build it from the foundation going up. And we don't really have a full direction of where we really want to go, what we're wanting to do, and who we want to work with, and how, and really getting the input from other constituents that will be affected by anything the committee puts forward. So collaboration is like pretty much the platform of what we have to do at the very beginning, to really understand what our goals of the committee are going to be, who we're interacting with, what our goals will actually fulfill, what other goals that our constituents kind of want to have seen, because they're all going to have different things that they want to see kind of come first, and really figuring out what we're able to do as a committee. And sometimes I have to rely on other people. I can't do everything myself and lead the committee, just because even with my normal busy schedule as just an academic advisor, I'm also in school, juggling a lot of things. So collaborating with other people is really kind of the best on how I work, because I used to be the type of person who would do everything on his own. I learned very quickly, you can't do that. And collaborating with other people, delegating things out, help me be more successful and help fulfill the goals of what I think our committee is trying to do with diversity, with equity, diversity, and inclusion in the college community. Yeah.
I mean, I guess collaboration kind of is in the title, right? Inclusion, collaboration. That's great, though. I think that's a really important point, particularly for students, but candidly for professionals as well, is that this idea of really ensuring that you're not doing it all yourself, because that actually doesn't benefit anyone, right? The huge benefit of having a group of people and different voices and differing opinions is to have a better representation, right? We think about that from a research perspective, but even just in everything always ties back to research. Rachel understands, but you know, it benefits everybody, because now we're getting a larger viewpoint, and putting it all on one's shoulders never really helps anyone, right? So I love that. I'm really excited to see what that group is doing. I'm really excited to see how that committee continues to grow and support all of us. So I thought at this point we could open up if folks have any questions or if they had any comments they wanted to make. I'd love to hear what people have to say. I'm happy to call on people, but I won't, or maybe I will, we'll see. Don, I like the comment that you made as well about authenticity. I think that's a really important piece to be thinking about. Authenticity shows pretty clearly.
I wanted to just build on what Stephen was saying regarding inclusion and collaboration with the new Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee, and really take this opportunity to increase awareness around that committee and that body of work too at the college. And to see this department, academic department, and then the EDI committee as an institutional committee, it's really meaningful to me to see these two really important initiatives move forward at the college. I've put a lot of time into both of them, and I'm happy to hand them over to the leadership, you guys, the chairs and faculty, students who will take this work and take it to where it needs to go. It's an important time for both of these initiatives, professionalism and inclusion. And I'm just so happy to see where things are going. So thank you, Stephen, for your leadership on that as committee chair. I really appreciate it. I know you have a lot on your plate, and just doing whatever you can do is really very, very meaningful to me, and appreciated. And Lamya and Aimee and oh my gosh, Kimberlie. No, your face isn't on my screen, so you're disappearing for me. Like, where are you? There you Kimberlie, thank you so much for taking these steps to see, like, bringing this to fruition. Like looking at our goals for these two different initiatives and bringing it to the next phase of really making it come alive so that we can see it in practice. I'm so excited. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Stacy, for being a part of this. I realize that your mics are muted, so if you wanted to say something, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat, obviously. Jerry was saying it's better to have a great team than a team of greats. Yeah, I love those Simon Sinek quotes. They're all like little word benders, but I think you're absolutely right. I love that. Anyone else have anything? Oh, Cynthia raised her hand. Yes. Okay. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, you just unmuted me. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for this. It's really, really beautiful to see you all tying, the subtleties of these core values into professionalism. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited about looking at the next step. As Director of Career Services, sometimes what I come up against talking to employers, and I know Lamya, you and I have talked about this, is some of the more obvious elements of professionalism, right? And I'm glad we were talking about the non-obvious ones, but things like showing up on time, dressing appropriately. And I think that one of the challenges for all of us is going to be that the people who are most professional and most interested in professionalism are going to show up to hear webinars like this. So I think the next challenge is going to be, how do we reach people who may not realize that there's some obstacles for them? The ones who I get calls about from employers saying, can you believe one of your graduates showed up here late or inappropriately dressed for an interview, et cetera. So I'm really looking forward to all figuring out ways to help address that.
Cynthia, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I was talking to a colleague who many people know, I think so. Marilyn Allen, who's the editor of Acupuncture Today, her and I have talked about this several times over the many, many years about professionalism. And she reminded me this weekend we were talking about conversation we had probably 10 or 15 years ago about what she had mentioned to me that she noticed that Pacific College graduates were more professional than other graduates. And at the time I was like, oh, that's such a compliment. Yay for us. And I was excited. And, you know, we were probably at some conference and she said it in passing. I was like, yay, that's great. And we talked about it again this week. And I said, you remember that conversation we had many, many years ago about you saying that our grads were professional? I said, what did you mean by that? Tell me more about that. And she's like, well, you know, you require more of your students than any other school. And you bring your students and faculty and staff, you bring the college along into the current level of awareness that health professionals need. And you bring us together as faculty members and bring us along too, so that we're getting professional development also. And that shows up with the students. And she said, you raise the bar with goals and within the school and the profession. And she says, and that's noticed. She says, it's not just about that students dress professionally, more specific, the graduates dress more professionally and speak more professionally. It's all these other things too. And I thought about that as a package and I was like, yeah, that's makes me so proud. So to Cynthia's point, it's like, you know, coming in the door, dressed professionally and speaking professionally, it means a lot. That's your, I mean, I'm a strong believer in first impressions are everything, you know. Like you can't take back a first impression. I mean, you can try to redo it, but make your first impression count. And it sounds like Pacific graduates are making an impression. So thank you all, the faculty, for your continued support in helping our students get there.
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia, for mentioning that. I think that's a good point, is not only the folks who are making an effort to do that, but how do we reach those who might kind of slip through the cracks? I think that's a big piece. That's one of the main motivations I had in joining this department in the first place, is that I was seeing it from that side. I was like, wow, if it's happening here, it's probably happening everywhere. This is an opportunity for us to grow as a profession, and how can we continue to highlight the fact that we have all these phenomenal skills. We spent all this time and all this effort, and really ensure that people are seeing the full value of what we bring to the table.
Lamya, I remember you saying that too, saying how I'm interviewing people that I'm shocked how they're coming in for their interviews, or they don't even return an email, or you make an appointment with them, they don't even show up, and then when they do show up, they're like dressed like they're going to the park or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and then also in conversation, then you start seeing some of the soft skills that are missing too, right? So it's not just a talk email or interview for me, it's also a clinical piece. And that's where you start to see kind of some of these elements pop in, and it just continues to surprise me. I'm like, great, we got work to do. That's what that tells me.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, I think to speak on that, I think we, got to continue to expose the value of, those values, and show that there is, we have to have a wide range of how we present ourselves. There's a right time to do this, and there's a right time not to do this, right? So if we continue to, find those leaders that are actually showing up professionally, and set that environment to where everybody else can fall in line, because, you have to lead in order to have followers. So if we set that tone and then be able to highlight those things and see what results are coming from, just showing up professionally, those take you a long way, because you have to be able to sell yourself. You have to be able to fit the part. But then at the same time, you can still be genuine. Like I said, there is a time and place for everything. You're not supposed to come, relaxed to, show up for a meeting and things like that. You want to be sharp and on point, because you have to be sharp and on point for your patients. How you do one thing is how you do everything, is what I believe in that. So that's definitely a good point that you brought up.
So Dawn raised a question in the chat, which I really feel strongly about, which hopefully I can help the committee with, which is moving forward the next steps about how we bring this into the curriculum. And the committee, I do know this, that the committee is working on course learning outcomes across all programs that can be really taught with curriculum and with assessment instruments. So it is happening, Dawn. And for anybody else who's wondering, it's like we have a method, we have a plan.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great segue to what Kimberly is going to talk about here to kind of close this out for the afternoon. And Jerry, I think your point is correct. It is in clinical counseling. We need to continue to see it in more than just the initial part of the curriculum. So yeah, at this point, I'm gonna pass it on to Kimberly here.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'd like to thank everyone for engaging in this discussion today on the embodiment of core values at Pacific College and beyond. I think this is a really important starting point. Stacy, your focus on the importance of the supportive aspects of professionalism, I really appreciated that. Like in optimal care or patient outcomes, mentorship, facilitation of health and wellness, the safety aspects, pride and promotion of our profession. These are all really important points. The idea of collaboration is embodied in all of that. Thank you very much. That was great. Stephen, I really loved your comments on when you're meeting people where they're at and framing it around this idea of awareness. So awareness and mindfulness are very similar, but awareness is slightly different, I think. And thank you for bringing that up. And also, Seanna, just awesome poetic exploration of mindfulness. That was awesome. But I also loved that you brought it down into the practical. Like, I do this because practically it saves me from this, this, and this. And that, I loved that. That was really important. And actually, I would love to have this entire panel like as part of the orientation to clinic. I think it would be really good. But we'll work on that. Godfrey, what you said about collaborative environments and making sure that you're in collaborative environments, that's really key. And, you know, as acupuncturists, we tend to be more isolated. And so that's very, very good. And I think like you do, is that collaboration is a key access point to the expression of professionalism. And so thank you so much for exploring that and putting it forth. Awesome job, everyone. And then I also want to acknowledge the people who are participating in the chat box. Deborah Russ, the hearing versus listening, very, very important. And Lamya just put this in about the bringing all these principles into the curriculum. Don had put some things along that way, and Jerry as well. And so thank you so much for all of that. And I hope all the participants got something out of this panel, and I appreciate your engagement. And you know, people highlighting what other people were saying, like Cynthia about the practical, you know, the mindfulness and the practicality and professionalism. And we will have this panel again. We do it each semester, hopefully. And aside from the panel discussions, we, you know, Dr. Holdwick, Dr. Kamel, and myself are all resources for you. You can email us with any issues you have, anything you want to talk about, anything that comes under the auspices of professionalism, which is a lot. So, and you can be faculty, students, staff, administration, whoever you are, we're here for you. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoyed this.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.